Hi, my name's Ashley and welcome to my watercolor YouTube channel. I'm a self-taught artist and I would love to help you learn all the tips and tricks that I have gained over the years through experience. So I hope that you enjoy these videos. I hope that they're helpful to you. If they are, please like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you for stopping by.
Hi everyone! Today I wanted to show you a commission that I'm doing for my church. Actually, we have a really cool mid-century modern building in Phoenix and we are redoing the lobby, so I'm making some art and I will be painting a sort of bouquet of flowers in a mid-century style of more geometric type flowers in really bright colors. So hopefully this is fun. I'm just going to start out by sketching it a little bit, and I know you can't see it super well, but it's just basically a bunch of abstract flowers, and you'll see as I fill it in later. But it's good to just give yourself a little bit of a reference point before you get started. This is a very big painting. It's I think it's like 24 by 36 inches. So you definitely don't want to just get started. So I'm just sketching out some ideas first. I have some previous paintings that I did that I'm using as reference. You can kind of see up top there different shapes that I did, different colors that I did before for a similar project. So I'm just using that as a reference and kind of clustering them together. And I can talk a little bit more about that later on, about how to organize that. But for now, yep, that's the sketch. And then I'm just going to start painting here. I've used the same paints that I always use. They're Prima Marketing, and they come in different palettes. So for this specific painting, I've created my own palette. There's this blue that I'm going to be using, and then a yellow, an orange, and a couple of greens. So something you can do if you don't feel comfortable just getting started with all the colors is to make yourself a little note of what areas you're painting what color. So this one, because it is so geometric, every flower just has its own color. So like this one is blue, some of the middles will be blue, and you could just put a little note with a little bit of paint in the spots that you're painting what color so you can make sure that it's balanced. I'm going to not do that. I'm going to make it a little bit risky, and I'm just going to use the blue first, do some blue in different areas, and then I'll start with the next color and just kind of make sure that it's balanced throughout the painting. But this first one, there's just some little, they're like bluebells sort of, they're like blue kind of half oval things. I'll do a couple of those, and I'm sticking with basically it's like 5 different shapes of flowers and 2 different shapes of leaves for this whole painting, and that could be any number of things. I mean, that could be more types of flowers or more types of leaves, but for this size, that's what I've chosen to kind of make it more balanced, and you'll see that as I go along. But yeah, I'm just starting with these blue ones, and you'll notice on the one on the very right there, it's kind of, there's a divot in it to make space for the other flower that'll be next to it. So you just want to make sure you could overlap, I guess you could overlap the colors, but you never really know what that's going to end up like. So generally you just want to keep your colors separate. If you have 2 flowers that are right next to each other, you don't want them all to be totally separate. It's good when they're touching a little bit. But you just have to plan ahead for that a little bit when you start to put the paint in, so you don't get them bleeding into weird colors. Because I think, yeah, sometimes if you put like brown or I mean orange with the blue or something, it could look pretty brown. It'd be not so great. So I'm just making sure that those don't bleed together for now. And then later on I'll show you some areas that I do want to bleed. But for now I'm just keeping them separate. And you'll notice that I'm using a good amount of water, but not too much. And I just want it to be a good deep color. You could make it lighter, you could add more darkness, you could do a variation within the 3 different shapes that I've already done there. But yeah, for now that's kind of that first one. And then we will move on to this big orange one over here. This one is a different shape, but similar in that I'm just doing it in one solid color. This is a simple way of painting this kind of design because I'm not mixing colors really at all. They're just kind of solid and there's no layering. And I just dropped a bunch of little paints all over. I'll show you how to lift that up in a second. That happens a lot. But yeah, so I'm just filling that in. I started with the edges and doing those outlines, and then I'm just filling it in and kind of letting it bleed as I go. So some parts will be darker than others, obviously, but I just want the color to be nice and bright. And something I really like about this brand of the Prima paints is that they do actually dry just as bright as when you first put them on the paper, which is not the case of every type of watercolor. And now I'm just going to lift up those little stains that I made. So basically that happens all the time when I'm painting, especially with something this big, when you have to drag the paint from one side to the other. But you just put some water on your brush, make sure you have a clean brush, and start rubbing it in a little bit, not too much to ruin the paper, and it's harder when you have cheaper paper, but this paper's pretty good, holds a bit of water, so I just put a bunch of water on there and started kind of rubbing it with the brush, rubbing it with the paper towel, and it starts to lift, and you can do that a few times until it's completely removed. But yeah, that's no problem. It's fairly easy to remove, and see, you can't even notice that there was a mark there. Okay, cool. So I will just continue with this orange one a little bit. Make sure that gets filled in, maybe I use a new color. I'm using the same brush throughout this, but you want to make sure that your brush is nice and clean. So you just want to make sure your water stays clean and that you're drying it off on the paper towel before you're putting it on another color. You don't want them bleeding together and getting too muddy. But for this one, I'm just going to start with the centers of some of the flowers, just for a little bit of spreading out of the color there. So got some blue on one side, orange on the other, and then I'll put some yellow around, kind of trying to balance it out. And then I have one big orange one, so I'll do one big yellow. And then just slowly fill in the middle. And obviously yellow is a lighter color, so you might need a little bit more pigment on your brush to make it the darker, richer color that you're going for, but same type of deal. Just kind of moving it up and down, not using too much water, so it stays nice and dark. And you'll notice I change the angle of how I'm holding my brush sometimes, depending on whether I want a lot of pigment. I might press down and use the whole side of the brush, versus if I'm just doing a little bit of like an outline and I want more control, I'll just do it more straight up and down and use the tip of the brush. So this is a size 5 brush, which I honestly use for everything because the tip is really small, but then it can be so much wider. It's a really good variety of sizes, actually. You can do more details, but also bigger. It's also really good for leaves. I'll show you that later on, but it spreads out really nicely. Okay, so I've done the centers of some of those flowers, and then I'm going to do a second ring. But in this case, I want a little bit of bleeding, so there's some areas that I'll make touch each other, and some that I will keep a little faint line of white in the middle of, so that they don't come together, because blue and orange is not a great combination when you get those mixing together. But yeah, so that will be that. Let's see, what do I want to do next here? Do a couple more kind of accents, just to make those a little bit more interesting there before I add the leaves in. So that's opposite, the blue center and the orange on the outside, same kind of deal. Still a little bit wet, it's a little bit drier than the orange one, but I still don't want it to bleed too much. I don't want the pigment to run out, so I'm just going to keep that a little bit separated. You'll see it bled a little bit, but that's good. We don't want it to be completely just like solid blocks of color. You could do that on a computer, but this fun part of watercolor is that it's a little bit more unpredictable and there's a little bit more variety in all the different shades. So I'm going to capitalize on that here. Okay, so I'll just keep doing that with a couple of those little flowers there, and then this one's going to look more like a daisy. So you notice how versatile this brush is. It can do those little rings around, it can do the big flowers, but it can also do these kind of straight lines coming out of this daisy type design. And just doing some lines out there. So you'll notice that I'm always going out from the center, or at least most of the time. Maybe not all the time, but most of the time I'm trying to go out from the center so that the strokes stay consistent, because the pressure and the angle that you put on the brush will change depending on whether you're going from inside to outside or vice versa. That one got a little bit of orange on it. Not sure how that happened, but you just dab it with paper towel, let it dry off and get that color off, and then go back over it with the yellow. No big deal. Totally fix that. But yeah, and some of those are a little lighter than I'd like, so I'm just going to go over those again with a little bit more color. But yeah, that's basically that. And I didn't let the yellows touch the center ring at all because I didn't want those bleeding. I might go back later and let those bleed a little bit. And then I noticed that this orange one is drying a little bit lighter than I wanted, so I'm just going to go over that again a little bit with a bit more color, make sure that's bright and cheery enough. Okay, so you're seeing it come together a little bit here. I know it still looks a little crazy and abstract, but just wanted to show you kind of how I'm doing each one individually. There's certain paintings that I do layers. This one is just a different style, so I'm not doing that quite so much. And then this flower is going to be a different shape, and I'm going to do it in green. Just because of the amount of colors that I have. I could do it in orange. That might look okay, but I kind of want to use this color just because I have two colors of green for the leaves, and so it could be, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. Flowers aren't normally green, but it's not supposed to be a realistic painting per se, so I'm going to use the light green there, and then I can do dark green leaves on the outside, and it will actually make it pop really well, and I think it'll look really nice with the blue and the orange in the middle there. But this one is just another different mid-century kind of shaped flower, and I'll do the leaves or the petals just kind of like that, just kind of smoothly moving around. Drop some more paint, whoops. Yep, just like that. And then I'd like to get a lot of color on the outsides. I'm not putting as much on the inside just because I don't want it to accidentally mix with the orange there, but on the outsides, to give it a little bit more definition, I'm putting more paint on the edges of the petals. That's looking pretty good. Rounding that out. That's called lifting. I call it erasing, but that's not technically what it's called. But yeah, very simple there. Not too hard. Don't worry if you mess up. Just, you probably want to get it before it dries too much, so that it comes up a little bit more easily. Okay, and then I'm going to go around these little circles with a different shape. Another circle, but I'm not going to fill them in. I like having a little bit of white space, especially on the edges, so that the density is in the middle of the painting, and then the outsides it'll have some little kind of spurts of color coming out, but also some white space so that it doesn't feel like quite so heavy. It'll balance it out in the end, hopefully, you'll see. But I did some blue there since there's not so much blue on the bottom half there. A little bit of blue on that side to kind of balance that out. So hopefully you can see that each color, there's kind of like a triangle of where you can find each color. There's like those bluebells, and then the blue on the bottom, and the blue on the right that I'm doing right now. And then there's the yellow on the top, the yellow on the bottom, and then I'm going to do another bit of yellow up on the top right there. The orange as well, it's spread out, right? And there's some orange on the big one, orange that I'm doing right now. None of them are right next to each other. They're kind of clustered in bits where there's not like two big yellow flowers next to each other, or orange, or vice versa, so that it feels more like it's spread out and balanced. But it's important to choose a good amount of colors to use. Like if I just had 3 colors, that would be really, really hard to separate them out. I would have to do a lot less flowers to make that possible. But because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, I can do that fairly easily. And I could have even chosen more, but this is kind of the color scheme that we're using for the lobby, so I wanted to make sure that it matched that. But sometimes it's fun to experiment. I mean, I could try this again with more or less, or even do it on a smaller scale to practice first. One thing I would like to get better at is practicing before I do something big like this. I sketched it, but I didn't plan it out really, or practice beforehand, or even really try out my colors. So if you want it to be a little bit more precise, I would definitely recommend trying it out on a smaller scale on a scrap piece of paper, trying out your different shapes and things, moving around the different types of flowers. You could even do like a sample of each of these and then just move them or cut them out and move them around, or glue them onto another piece of paper and see how you feel about the arrangement. But yeah, now I'm doing these little blue ones on the side here, just again so that the density is in the middle, and then the ones that are kind of going out on the edges are a little bit less. In the middle, there's kind of little sprigs of the branches there. But again, sticking with the circle kind of motif that we have going here, the rounded edges, everything being kind of soft and going together nicely there. Okay, so I'm just doing little branches going out from the main stem and then going on to the little flowers or berries or whatever you want to call them. And you could do this the other way too. You could start with the branches if you wanted to have a little bit more of a direct shape and path to go down. I like to start with the flowers or circles first and then fill the branches in. It really can go either way. You might want to try it both ways and see what you prefer. There's not really any right way to do it. Whatever works for you. Okay. But you'll notice how I started with the flowers, and then now I'm going to the branches, and then eventually I'll do the leaves. This is just my process. I'm going to go through and add branches down here now. So I'm kind of connecting everything to the middle. You don't want anything just like floating randomly. And of course, this is not a realistic painting, so nothing would ever really be arranged like this, but you want it to all kind of connect and not just feel like it's separate pieces together, but like it's one big cluster. So I'm just doing little branches there and then adding some little leaves. Something I like to try to do is keep the leaves the same color as the branches. Of course, they would match in real life, so I would hope they would match in here. So just some littler ones there. I don't want those to be too dominant because they are on the outside. They don't need to be very big, especially because the flowers are big. We don't want them to overpower. And connecting those two. And then I'll do some some leaves here in the middle, just to fill in some of those blank spaces. You'll see how a lot of the flowers are touching each other, but then some of them are not. Okay, now I'm going to do some branches for these. Connect those to the middle. And some different shaped leaves. And I'm kind of just making up these leaf shapes as I go, but as you kind of learn your style with painting, you'll have some shapes that you're more drawn to, and these are these are just cute ones that I use sometimes for more like less realistic type paintings. Very few leaves in real life would actually look like this, but that's okay. It's the shape that counts in this painting, so it's the rounding that we want to kind of be reflected throughout the whole painting. Okay, and then some final branches here, and some leaves that are similar to the ones that I did for the same shape of flower that's down below, just to keep it a little bit more consistent. Okay, some more little ones down there. Now I'm just kind of going through and looking around at what spots feel like they need to be filled in a little bit, or making sure that the shapes and the colors are balanced throughout. There's definitely some areas to work on, so I'm just going to keep kind of filling it in as I feel like it needs to be. This one, I feel like it's just a little bit heavy on the left side, so I wanted to have some coming down here. And all the leaves I just did are in that darker green, and then now I'm going to do a few in the lighter green to mix it up a little bit. So that's a different shape of leaf and a different color, but yeah, I just felt like it needed a little bit more balance on that side. And maybe up here to do a couple of those kind of circular ones, but a little bit bigger. Again, in the lighter green, just to make sure it's balanced out. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Another couple little ones up there. It's basically up to you. I mean, I could have left it the way it was, but I personally like the contrast of the leaves being a little smaller because I made really big flowers. So I feel like if you have little details, then the bigger flowers stand out actually even more. And plus, I really like this green color. So I definitely want that to be in more than just the one flower in the middle there. Yeah, that's cute. That one feels like it needs a little bit more down there, so it's not just one sprig. So I'm just going to do some really little darker green ones. Okay, how does that look? I think that's pretty good. It feels pretty balanced to me. Yeah, there's a good variety of the leaf shapes and colors and types. Maybe just this little area here could be filled in a little bit. Okay, and then just to balance that, I never really like having just one of a specific style of flower or leaf, so I'm going to try to balance that out on the other side a little bit. Okay, cool. So I'll just connect those to the middle. Put some little leaves on there. That feels more full. Perfect. Looking good. I think it's ready to go. Just got to sign it at the end. Of course, you want people to know that it's yours. And yeah, I hope this was a helpful tutorial for you. It's basically just an introduction to composition and colors and just a mid-century kind of design. So if you create anything at home, I would love for you to post it on Instagram and tag me at Ashley Chase Creates. I would encourage you to try your own colors, composition, everything else. But hopefully you have a couple of takeaways from this. And I just wanted to thank you again for watching.